Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going to be doing an eyeshadow palette collection. I am so excited. I've been really wanting to do an updated version of this video for you guys. If you guys have been with me for a while, then you know that I did do my first eyeshadow palette collection back 2 years ago in 2016, and that video is just really special to me because that was my first video that I hit 1,000 views or more on, and now it has 89K. So I definitely know that you guys like these types of videos, and I have collected a lot more palettes since I did that video. I've gotten rid of some, so my collection is definitely different, but I'm gonna be doing this video a little bit different. I'm actually gonna be talking you guys through all of the palettes instead of just showing you guys the close-ups and swatches and doing the voiceover. I just thought it would be like a little bit more personal this way, and I could really tell you guys what I like about each palette. But I will be inserting close-up swatches for every single palette that I talk to you guys today, just so you guys have a visual of what the swatches look like as well. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this video. Definitely maybe grab a snack because it's probably going to be a long one, and let's just go ahead and get started. Talking a little bit about the organizer because I get so many questions from you guys every time that I show this in one of my videos. This is from the brand By Allegory, and I got this on Amazon for $24. I think it's a really good deal, but I have to say this is so nicely made. I believe this is the only acrylic organizer that I have from By Allegory, but I could see why a lot of people love them. I'm in love with this. It's a nice hard acrylic. It's very sturdy, and what I like about it the most is that I'm gonna pick this up so you guys can see. You could see down the side right there, it does have individual slots. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 slots. I should have counted that before I started, but this has 8 slots in it. You guys can probably see better if I turn you this way, but if you do have a little bit of a bigger palette, or if you want to fit more palettes in here than just what the slot allows, these are removable, so then you can kind of stack the palettes more on top of each other and fit more. So let's just go ahead and get started talking about the palettes. The first one that I have to show you guys is, of course, the Anastacio Soft Glam palette. This is my favorite palette at the moment, hence why it's right up front. Easy grabbings when I'm sitting here doing my makeup. I just love this palette so much. I love Anastasia's formula. You guys are going to see I have a couple other Anastasia palettes up here as well. There's just something special about this to me. It just has the most beautiful mix of colors. It has your warm tones, it has some neutrals, your deeper shades, your daytime shades, your shimmers, your metallics. This to me right now is just the perfect palette. I have really been loving this. I've been using this a lot. If you guys have been watching my past couple of videos, you know that I've been all about this palette and obsessed with this. And overall, when it comes to Anastasia formulas, they are definitely one of my favorite formula of eyeshadow. I do have 2 others in here as well. So the other 2 Anastasia palettes that I have are the Prism Palette and the Modern Renaissance palette. Modern Renaissance being pretty similar to the Soft Glam, if you guys have seen that palette before. There are a couple of repeat shades in this palette: Cypress Umber, Burnt Orange, and Tempera, and I believe that is it when it comes to repeat shades in these 2 palettes, but I just love them. I would definitely say, comparing the 2 palettes, Modern Renaissance is going to be a little bit more of a pinky red, a little bit more vibrant, and I also feel like it leans a little bit more on the cool tone side. I definitely feel like a lot of these shades right here are very cool tone, but then you also get some nice warm daytime shades over here. Just a quick visual so you guys can see them. Modern Renaissance is on top and Soft Glam is on the bottom, so it's definitely personal preference. I obviously feel like I could justify having a million neutral palettes in my collection, but I really like having both of these. I like combining the shades, and these are just really gorgeous additions to my collection. I also have the Prism palette, and this one is definitely the most different and unique palette that I have in my collection. These are colors that I never thought that I would ever gravitate towards and I would ever reach for, and to be honest with you guys, I don't reach for this often, but this is one of those palettes that I always have so much fun with when I do reach for it, and I like to combine it with other palettes, so I'll use it for like the pop of colors. These bright colors are so fun to play with. This Dimension shade right here is a really gorgeous bluish purple, but it also has like a little bit of silver in there. Just a really, really unique palette overall. Definitely different, and I love the creative thought and the creative aspect behind this. I think Anastasia and Norvina did a great job. So those are my 3 Anastasia palettes. Right back behind behind those Anastacio palettes, I have my Tarte Tartlet Toasted. This is another one of my favorite palettes. Such a gorgeous palette as well. You guys know I love all things neutral, and the packaging on this is really pretty. So you have your tortoise packaging with the gold mirror. And this is the inside of this palette. Again, this is just such a gorgeous mix of shades. If you like neutrals that lean a little bit more on the warm side, but they're not gonna be really fiery or really orange or red on your eye, this is definitely the palette for you. This is my perfect, next to the Soft Glam palette, I would definitely say this is my other favorite palette. I definitely reach for these two, pretty much the same amount, and they give a very similar vibe. My favorite shade in this palette would definitely be Latte. It is a perfect transition shade for my skin tone, and then of course I love the other mattes and the metallics. And if you guys notice, this palette doesn't have your typical dark brown or a black. Instead, it has this gorgeous plum shade, which I think deepens up the look so nicely, and it's just different. It's very unique, and I love that it's not just a typical dark brown or black. So when it comes to this palette, I would definitely say overall it is beautiful, one of my favorites. Also in my collection, I have the ColourPop Yesplease palette. This is my only ColourPop palette, and I believe this was the first palette that they ever released. This palette is so good, you guys. This retails for $16, and it is still available on the ColourPop website if you guys are curious. So when it comes to just a warm palette, when I want a look that's very fiery, that has an orange, a red, a really intense gold, this is the palette that comes into my mind and that I will use 9 out of 10 times when I want a really warm palette. These are those fiery red orange shades that I was talking about, and it's just absolutely perfect for that. The formula on these are really great, but the mattes in this palette are very creamy and pigmented and buttery. So this is a huge hit for me. If you guys were looking into getting this palette or the ColourPop palettes, I do think that they are great. This is the only one that I have tried, so I can't really speak on all of the palettes that they have, but I'm assuming that they have these similar formulas. So this one is another huge hit for me, definitely in my top 5 as well. This next palette is the Morphe 15N, or the Nightmaster palette. I know I really haven't shown this on my channel too much. I picked up this palette when I went to the International Beauty Show in New York City, and this is what this looks like. These little 15 pan palettes that Morphe has intrigue me so much more than their 35 pan palettes, and I believe, in my personal opinion, that the formula is much better than their 35 pan palettes. What I love about this palette though, at the end of the day, even though I don't love cool tones so much, is that it's a really great mix of your neutrals, your warm tones, and some cool tones. So up here you have some neutral and warm shades, and then you also have your cool tones. But when I do wear cool tones, I love them to be purple. So that's what really drew me into this palette when I saw it. I really like smoking out some of this purple on my lower lash line. My absolute favorite look to do with this type of palette is to do just a normal neutral or warm look on the top of my lid, and then play around with some of these purples on the bottom. It's just a really pretty look. Like I said, the formula on these are really great as well, and I think this palette is about $15 or something like that on Morphe's website. I will have it linked down below for the exact price, but definitely a great palette, I would say, for what you're getting formula wise, colors, etc. Really gorgeous palette. I love this from Morphe. And the last palette that is sitting in this organizer on my vanity is the Urban Decay Heavy Metals palette. This is what this palette looks like. Definitely a really cool palette. This was limited edition around the holidays. So it pushes out the side right here, and it comes out like a flat palette, which I thought is really cool. I haven't really seen anything packaged like this really ever before I saw this palette. I got this for Christmas and I was so excited when I got it, but I kind of just forgot that I had this in my collection, so I pulled it out, put it up here, and I've been trying to get more use out of it. In this palette you get 20 metallic shades, so this half is more of a natural / neutral metallic, and then this half is more of a colorful metallic. I love the colorful shades. I want to do a look with this one. It's just like the most beautiful mermaid teal shade. Can you guys see that? This is such an awkward angle. So pretty. One more thing before we go into my drawer of palettes. I forgot that I had this, so I actually have this in another spot in my room, and I kind of use this more as decoration. So this is a letter holder that I got from Staples, and it has the 3 slots. Back in the day, you guys, I had all of my palettes in this container. I don't know how I accumulated so many so fast, but we're gonna move past that. So like I said, this is a letter holder from Staples. Before, I needed a bigger container like the one from By Allegory. This was an awesome and very inexpensive way to store my palettes. This was maybe $5. You can get something very similar at Target. So if you only have like 3 4, 5, 6 palettes, this is a really great alternative if you want to store your palettes sitting out as well. But like I said, I just use this as decoration in another part of my room. These are my Urban Decay Naked palettes, 1, 2, and 3. Of course, we're going to be starting off with the original Naked palette, which is pretty much everyone's first eyeshadow palette. So as you guys can see, I definitely haven't gotten a crazy amount of use out of this palette. I do love it. My only issue with these palettes are the lack of matte shades. I can't even blame the palette itself, because when these palettes were made, all of the crazy transition shades and inner corner shades and outer crease shades, outer V shades, whatever you want to call them, they weren't a thing. When these palettes came out, makeup was a lot more simple, and you kind of would put one color all over your lid and call it a day. Some of these, just looking at the names, are so, it just throws me back so hard. Like Sin, Naked, I forgot what some of these are called, Sidecar, Half Baked. Remember when Half Baked was like if someone had gold on their lid, you knew it was Half Baked. So this is definitely, like I said, just a classic palette. I know it might seem silly to hold on to it if I'm not using it, but I just have attachment issues to my makeup, you guys know, and these are just like the OG 3. This is the Naked 2 palette right here. If you guys have never seen it, definitely leans more on the cool tone side. I loved this palette for so long. This was the first Naked palette that I had in my collection, and I definitely have to say that I remember just teaching myself a lot of eyeshadow on this palette. I'm not really sure if you guys saw my video with the Naked palette. I did kind of like a throwback Thursday with that. I want to do one with this one as well, so let me know if that is something that you guys want to see, like a throwback Thursday tutorial with the Naked 2 palette. I think that that would be fun, kind of implementing more trendy and modern makeup techniques with an older palette, to see if that's something that's possible. I think that would be cool. So if you guys don't know, this is what the inside of the famous Naked 3 palette looks like. This is a really pretty palette, very unique, very mauve-y and dusty and rose gold and pink, and I really thought I would love this palette. And as you guys can see, I got a lot of use out of a lot of these shades, because I thought that this palette was the best thing that ever happened when it first came out, but slowly over time I just realized that I didn't love this as much as I thought. The colors weren't really the best for my skin tone anymore, and this is something that I've just tried to use time and time again, and I'm not obsessed with anymore. So I just wanted to quickly show you guys how I have the rest of my palettes organized in this bottom drawer before I pull them up to show you guys one by one. So right here I have some of my larger palettes lined up right here, some highlighting palettes, and then I have tinier palettes, and then some other bulky and larger palettes back here. So that is how I have all of my other palettes organized in the drawer. Now I'm gonna bring them up and show you guys one by one. So the first one that I have to show you is another Anastacio palette, and this is the World Traveler Shadow Couture palette. This is such an old palette, you guys. I want to say that she came out with this in like 2012 or 2013, something like that. And this is such a throwback palette. Definitely let me know if you guys had this palette in your collection, because if you have, then you've been collecting palettes and eyeshadow for a really long time. Some of my favorite shades were Bellini. Pink Champagne is really pretty. I want to see if Anastasia still has this shadow, because this is a really gorgeous shade. This is kind of reminding me of the Prism palette. I never thought to compare the two, but they kind of have similar vibes to them if you guys look. Maybe a little bit different, but definitely similar vibes. So I think if you want something like the Shadow Couture, you might be satisfied with the Prism palette, because they do have some of those similar shades. If I put it like this, I feel like you can really see the similarities. Fudge is one of my favorite Anastasia shades. I actually went ahead and ordered it in a single shadow right here. I still have to get to using this one, but I really wanted to have a backup just in case I ever ran out of this one, or if this one just isn't like good anymore to use or something like that. But love this palette. Definitely an awesome limited edition. I have a couple of the Too Faced food palettes, I guess you would call them. They're not all chocolate palettes. I almost said chocolate palettes, but I have the chocolate bonbons, the sweet peach, and then the original chocolate bar. Too Faced has not been intriguing me lately with their newer releases. I have to say though that I used to love their palettes and the makeup that they were releasing, so this was one of my favorites when I got it, and I still do dip into this once in a while. It's a really cute palette. I love the thought behind it, and I like all the little hearts and the color scheme in here. I know a lot of people didn't love this palette palette too much. This is the palette that I really like to bring when I have a client or something, because I feel like you can get that natural but smoky look that Jaclyn Hill always talks about. It really gives that kind of vibe. It has your mix of neutrals, but it leans a little bit more cool. It has some pops of color. It just has a little bit of everything. Definitely a nice palette that I like to have in my collection. And then also another good one is the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. If you guys saw, I did get the Just Peachy Mattes palette and I did not like that at all. I definitely would highly recommend sticking with the Sweet Peach palette. For sure, definitely one of the more intriguing palettes and packaging that Too Faced has done. The color scheme in this is really different and really interesting. A lot of people were kind of shocked to see the lack of peach shades in here, and I was too at first, but I kind of like it. I kind of like the vibe that this palette gives, and I can see why it's not overloaded with peach shades. I don't know, I just really like it. It has a really great variety of some shimmers, which are gorgeous. I love the formula of the shimmers in these palette, really nice. Then it has some greens, some purples. It's like a lot of different shades that complement peach with some peaches thrown in here and there. So really great summer palette. Whenever I look at this palette or smell it and see the colors, it just reminds me of summer, and I get a lot of use out of this during the summertime. And lastly, for the Too Faced palette, you guys know this is my holy grail Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. This was literally like the only palette that I used, I want to say, like my junior and senior year of high school. I used this for my junior prom. I used this when I went to school every single day, and as you guys can see, I did the exact same look with this palette all of the time. But this is just one of those classic palettes to me that I feel like will never get old. I just think that the colors are so great, and even though I don't reach for this so much anymore, and I don't think that the formula is the absolute best, this is still just a safe palette for me when I don't know what I want to do, when I want just like a quick and easy go-to eye look. This is the palette that I reach for, and I'm sure you guys can see my favorite shades were these right here: Salted Caramel, Marzipan, and Semi-Sweet. I did like Milk Chocolate, and I want to say this was Fudge. I liked those shades too. The Urban Decay Naked Smoky palette is another good one. I don't keep this with my other Naked palettes just because this is one that I actually like to use and I use pretty frequently for like a special occasion. This to me is when Urban Decay started to really step it up a little bit. I think that this is formulated a lot better than the original first three Naked palettes, and I love, love, love the packaging. It's very sturdy, very protective, and I love the marble on this. Kind of has a really nice smoky look to it, and when you open it up, it is just a classic smoky palette filled with a lot of cool tones. This is the palette that I wore for my senior ball, and I just did like a really gorgeous cool tone navy smoky eye. But I do also like this palette as well because it does have some of those lighter neutrals that you can do a bit of a lighter look with this. But overall, I do like this. One of my favorite Naked palettes for sure, probably my favorite. I do think that I've gotten more use out of this than the first Naked palette in my collection, so really great addition to my collection, and I actually really like this one. This right here is the Morphe and Kathleenlights collab palette. I love Kathleenlights, and I really wanted to get this palette. I believe this was one of the first collab palettes that I got in my collection, and of course, like I said, I love Kathleen and I wanted to support her, so I went ahead and purchased this palette. I do like this palette, but I don't absolutely love it. Some of the ones that do stand out to me are this one right here. It's a really gorgeous transition shade because it almost has like a little bit of gold reflect in it, but you could barely tell. This white shade right here is an exact dupe for MAC Nylon. I love this baby puke shade. I don't know how people started calling those that. And this really gorgeous mermaid green. Some of the shades are a bit dry and patchy, like these cranberry shades are a bit dry. This gray is a bit dry, so definitely not my favorite formula. I feel like Morphe has stepped up their game in their 15 pan palettes. Like this one that I showed you guys before, the Nightmaster, is much better quality than this one right here, but it's not horrible. It wasn't too expensive. It was an affordable palette, and overall I did just purchase it because it was a collab with Kathleen and I wanted to make a video for you guys. But I'm not like dying over this palette anymore. I kind of just keep it as a collector's item. And of course I have my two Lorac Pro palettes. I've had these palettes for so long. Do you guys remember when these were like all the rage on YouTube. So this is the first and original Lorac Pro Palette. This was my favorite palette at one time. One thing about Lorac shadows that I don't think people give them a lot of credit for is that these are crazy pigmented shadows. I think that these are like really up to par with pigmentation of Anastacio palettes, and I don't think a lot of people give Lorac enough credit for that. I love the formulation of her palettes. Definitely another one of my favorite formulations in eyeshadow palettes, and this is just a classic palette that I don't see myself getting rid of. And then of course I had to get the second one when it came out as well. It does have some really unique and different colors. I love this rosé shade. The navy was really fun to play around with, as well as jade, a little bit more of a cool tone, kind of jewel tone palette, but I love both of them nonetheless. Again, the pigmentation on these are absolutely incredible, and I don't think that a lot of people really give these enough attention, and I think that they should, because they're really good palettes. The next little bunch of palettes are all from shop Hush. Hush was really kind enough to send me a couple of their palettes a few months ago to unbox for you guys and to show you guys. So the first one that I have right here is the Amazonia palette, and this is by the brand Face Candy. I have to say the palettes that Hush sent me are really unique from a lot of the palettes that I have in my collection, and they contain a lot of different colors. So here's the Amazonia palette, and I haven't seen colors like this in a palette either, or really in singles, like Toucan, Water Lily, Dangerous. A lot of these shades I haven't seen in a palette before, and like nonetheless put together in a palette. So I think that this is going to be really fun to play around with. I haven't had a lot of time to do a complete look with this palette, but the formula on these are really great, and I think this is going to be fun to play around with. And then here I also have the Bad Habit Retro Love palette. I will have the video linked right up here if you guys want to see me create a full look using this, but this is supposed to be an Anastasia Subculture dupe. The colors in Subculture were always something that really intrigued me. I just never had the chance to try them out because of all the controversy and stuff over the formula of Subculture. So I'm really excited that Bad Habit has a dupe for it, and that Hush was really kind enough to send it to me, so I have the chance to try it out and test it out for you guys. I like the color scheme, I like the formula, but if you guys want to know more about this, like I said, I will have that video linked at the top. And these are really inexpensive. I believe that these were only $10 or $12 each. And I also have the Athena and Aphrodite palettes from Bad Habit. So this one right here is Aphrodite, and this is supposed to be a dupe for Huda Beauty's original rose gold eyeshadow palette. And here is what the inside of this one looks like. This is such a pretty palette. I haven't used this one yet. I have done some swatches and the formula seems pretty nice, but I haven't dipped my brush into this or applied it onto my eyes yet. But from first impression, like just by looking at it and from doing a couple of swatches, this seems like a really nice palette. Definitely more colors that I would probably reach for in the fall time, but I'm excited to get more use out of this one. But one that I have used is the Athena palette, and this one is a dupe for the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk eyeshadow palette. I really love this palette. The color scheme in this palette just makes me really excited to do my makeup in the summertime. So many of these colors are kind of like a little bit of a duochrome. They're so shimmery, they apply really nicely, and the mattes are gorgeous. If you guys want to see me use this palette, I used this when you guys picked my makeup, my subscribers picked my makeup video, so you could see this in action in that video. But overall, definitely a gorgeous color scheme. I'm a little bit scared of the shade Daring right here because this is a straight up glitter, but other than this shade, I love the rest of this palette, and I've been playing around with this a lot. Another Tarte eyeshadow palette I have is the Tardis Pro Palette. I love the packaging on this. I have to say this is probably my favorite packaging on all of the palettes that I have. I love soft touch black and gold mixed together. I just think it's a really pretty combination. So besides the packaging, I also do really like the inside. You get a huge mirror in this palette, which I feel like makes it really travel friendly. I feel like I say this about a lot of the palettes that I have, but this one is different, more like pastel shades. You do have like a row of darker shadows, but a lot of the ones over here lean to be a little bit more pastel, and they're all matte besides these four on the side right here. So definitely more of a unique shade selection and layout for sure when it comes to Tarte palettes, but I do really like this one as well. This is the Too Faced and NikkieTutorials The Power of Makeup palette. I really do enjoy the formula of the shadows in this palette. I love the blushes and the bronzer. The only thing that I do have a bit of an issue with is the highlight. Not a lot of pigment comes off and it doesn't really highlight the face too well, but Other than that, I love everything else in this palette. I love the eyeshadow choices that she used. I love that there's the basic browns, you have your lid shades, you have a black, you have your white cream shade, and then the pops of color. I just think she really thought of everything when it comes to being travel friendly and like a day-to-day look you could do, but you could smoke it out, you could add some color, and then of course you have your face products in there as well. So I do really like this palette. I think NikkieTutorials really designed this palette perfectly. If you guys hear snoring or breathing, Max is right here with me. He's gonna help me do this video. Okay, ready? The next palette that I have here to show you guys is the BH Cosmetics and Shad XO 9-color eyeshadow palette, and then this is also a 9-color lipstick palette. I really overall like the concept of this palette. I think it's really travel friendly, and here are the shades that come inside of this. These are such classic Shad XO shades. I've been a huge fan of hers for a while, so I really wanted to support her with this palette, but I like all of the colors that come in here. But this is one that I do like to take when I travel because it also does have those lip colors. Next up is the Tartlet in Bloom palette by Tarte. I really like these Tartlet palettes. I'm gonna compare these two for you guys because I know a lot of people are curious of the difference of the In Bloom and the Toasted palette. So first of all, just showing you guys the In Bloom. This is definitely more of a neutral palette. It has a lot more gray shades, some pinks in there, more taupes, and it has some deeper shades as well, where I feel like the Toasted palette is definitely a lot more on the warmer side. So that's the difference between those two, but I do like the Tartlet in Bloom as well when I just want a nice neutral glam. I think that this is like the perfect bridal palette if you guys are looking for something for your wedding, because you can get a natural look, but it can definitely be amped up. You could use the dark shades as liners. Just a really great palette. I overall like the Tartlet palette. This next palette is another limited edition palette, unfortunately, but Kat Von D is working on a second metal matte palette. So here's the original metal matte palette right here. So here is the metal and the matte. Her artwork is just fantastic, and I think just the packaging on this is awesome. But the one thing that blew me away about this palette is obviously the inside. This is seriously like a palette. Like, this reminds me of a painter's palette. It is so beautiful and colorful, but again, you have your neutral shades. To me, this is something that I love to play around with. I don't have many colorful shades in my collection. That is something that I really like to limit because I'm not going to use colorful shades so much. I don't need a million of them, but this is one of my favorites to use. My favorite shade in this palette is definitely Twinkle. It has been rumored that she is working on the metal matte too, so definitely keep your eyes out for that one if you missed this one and you are interested in a palette like this. And then right here we have my little tiny baby palettes, my first ever palette that wasn't like a Claire's palette or something like that is the Naked Basics palette by Urban Decay, and here is what she looks like. I use this palette like, I want to say I got this in 9th grade and into 10th grade. I used this so much, and it doesn't even look like it, but this lasts a really long time. And this has an okay formula. The formula of this is very reminiscent to the larger Naked palettes, which I'm not super crazy about, but it wasn't bad, especially for like my first palette, for a beginner's palette. This was really cute, and of course it was a lot cheaper than the Naked palettes were, but this is my baby, and I really did a lot of my first eyeshadow with this palette, so that is why I still have this little guy. This palette is another more recent addition to my collection, and this is the Huda Beauty Mauve Obsessions palette. These palettes are so tiny, you guys. I have tiny hands and they literally fit in the palm of my hand. I'm not really sure if you guys have these little tin palettes by Too Faced, but they are considerably smaller, about half the size of those, just to give you guys a comparison on the size. But like I said, that doesn't really matter because I think, again, this is a really cute size to travel with, and also you do get really big pan sizes and it fills up the whole size of the palette. The formula on these palettes are really good. They're very buttery and creamy, and the mattes are super pigmented, and these metallic shades are intense, you guys. I love doing eye looks with these because they're really foiled and metallic, and they look really pretty on the eyes, as you guys can see. So I have the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette and also the Natural Matte palette. I love the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. This palette I was really excited for when it first came out, and I just think it's a cute concept. I do like Too Faced's food themes. I just think right now with what they're doing with the peaches, they kind of stretched it a little bit too far, but anyway, I do really like the concept and the color scheme in this peanut butter palette. I think it was just a really cute palette to add to my collection. I did a couple of tutorials NikkieTutorials with this palette as well, and I love the color. So definitely a cute palette. I love that one. And then I also have the Too Faced Natural Matte. I remember when I first got this palette, I was so excited. So this one is all matte shades. I do like to use it once in a while, and it's just a cute palette, and I love the packaging on this. These are my bigger palettes. So the first one here is this Stila Dream and Full Color palette. I've had this for years, you guys. I want to say this is easily 10 years old. I'm not kidding. My aunt got this for me when I was really young, like very first into makeup. I want to say that I've had this since before middle school. That's how long that I've had this palette. So this isn't something that I feel very comfortable putting on my face, and I don't think that I would. This palette is what introduced me to Stila Kitten. As you guys can see, I got a lot of use out of that right there, and I actually do have, I went out and bought the single of that after having this palette. But I just had this for so long. Like I said, I don't think I would ever use this again, but it's just something that's been in my collection for so long, and this was like literally my first piece of makeup that was actually mine that I ever got, and it was a gift, and I just don't want to part with it because I've had it for so long. And then I also have the Urban Decay Vice 4 palette. This is such a cool palette. I love the packaging on this. It almost looks like a spider web, but this is the fourth one, like I said, and here are what the colors look like. I like the huge mirror on this too, and look at these colors. So again, a really fun and colorful palette, but they're not too crazy. I find this to still be a nice and wearable palette, and it's definitely different from a lot of the things that I do have in my collection. But of course, you guys know my favorite shades are these two down here, which are the only warm shades in the palette. There's not a huge variety in this palette, but again, this is just something that I keep if I want that fun pop of color. I definitely don't think I can get a full look out of this palette. I would have to dip into other matte shades and stuff, but it's really fun to keep if I want a fun pop of color. The last two palettes that I have to show you guys are my 35 Pan Morphe palettes. I've kind of been toying with getting rid of these. I'm not really sure if I'm going to, but I'm gonna think about it because I just haven't used them in so long. They're a little bit big to travel with, and even when I put them in my makeup kit, I still always end up using something else. So I'm thinking about getting rid of these, but I'm not sure yet. So this is the Morphe 35O. I'm sure a lot of you guys know what this palette looks like. And then I also have the 35K, which I actually like this one a lot more than the 35O. This one has a really cool variety of colors, and I like this one because it has your neutral shades, a couple of warm shades, and then the bottom leans very cool tone. I do really like these. They're just not my favorite, and I don't find myself reaching for them anymore because of the size. I feel like they kind of just get hidden in the back of my drawer because that's the only place that they really fit. I'm still gonna keep these in my collection for now, but I think eventually this is something that I'm gonna let go of just because I don't really reach for them that often. Alright you guys, so that's going to complete my eyeshadow palette collection. I really hope that you guys enjoyed seeing this video and all my palettes and seeing swatches and hearing my mini reviews and stuff like that. If you guys did enjoy, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up because it really helps me out. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to my channel and have my notifications on. That way you guys will get notified every single time that I upload a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and of course, I will see you in my next one. Bye guys!